There is a place that once held more human beings packed into less space than almost anywhere in recorded history. 33,000 people inside a single city block. A block so dense that the people living on the ground floor never saw the sun, not once, because 200 years of construction had been piled on top of them without a single architect, a single permit, or a single map. It had no police, no landlords anyone could name, no government that would admit it existed. And then, one day, the authorities looked at it and decided the only way to fix it was to erase it, to tear it down. Hold on to that, because we are going to come back to it at the very end of this journey. And when we do, you'll understand something quietly disturbing about every single place on this list. We're told that the city is humanity's greatest invention, a machine for turning strangers into neighbors, a place where a person with nothing can arrive and build a life. For most of us, that promise mostly holds. But for tens of millions of people alive tonight, the city is not a promise. It's a trap, a structure that was supposed to shelter them and instead quietly consumes them, their time, their health, their lungs, their years. And now we're going to walk into 10 of them. We'll start with the strange, places that shouldn't be possible, but somehow are. And step by step, we'll descend into the places the modern world would rather you never saw. This is the 10 worst urban hells on Earth. This looks like an ordinary house in Beijing. But take a look at where it's sitting. It looks no different from a luxury penthouse perched atop a residential building. So, what's the catch? From a distance, this structure looks like a stroke of real estate genius. In a mega city where every square inch of land is worth its weight in gold, the owner turned a vacant rooftop into a piece of skyland, erecting a complete 3-story villa. It promised an isolated, spacious living experience big enough for a traditional 3-generation family, a level of luxury that rivals any high-end penthouse. When a standard penthouse is built, the entire structure is engineered from day one to support the weight. However, these mansions in the sky were added after the building was already completed. Tens of tons of concrete and faux rock weighed down on the roof, pushing the structural limits to the brink, cracking the concrete below, and threatening the lives of hundreds of residents. This shocking scandal ultimately forced Chinese authorities to step in and order an emergency demolition. Yet, even the wealthy owners living inside were far from comfortable. The price of that stunning view was the non-stop 24/7 thrumming of industrial AC units as big as cars, The suffocating stench of food wafting up from restaurants below, and the stifling heat radiating from thousands of square meters of concrete underfoot. From a distance, it might look like a dream. But in reality, it's a grim warning of a city running out of space. And if this is what the rich have to endure while they still have choices, just wait until you see how those down below, the ones with no choices at all, are forced to live. Next up is another crisis emerging from China's megacities. Back in 2015, the bike-sharing boom erupted as a promised transportation revolution, a green solution to end traffic congestion and urban pollution. Determined to capture market share at any cost, tech conglomerates flooded the streets with tens of millions of cheap bicycles. But the game collapsed far faster than anyone anticipated. As funding dried up and companies went bankrupt one after another, millions of brand new bikes instantly became useless junk. City authorities were forced to impound and haul them away to vacant lots on the outskirts of town, creating massive bicycle graveyards that stretched to the horizon. What makes these places quietly disturbing isn't just the staggering scale of waste. It's the toxic footprint left behind. As rubber tires break down and metal frames corrode in the rain and sun, hazardous chemicals leach directly into the soil and the groundwater table below. An icon that once represented modern convenience and green transit ended up slowly poisoning the very land it sat on. Many of these graveyards have since been cleared for scrap metal, but some still remain. They stand as a strange modern warning that a city can be overwhelmed not only by poverty, but by excess. By too much, too fast, with no plan for what happens after. So far, every urban hell we've seen has been eerie and unsettling. Thankfully, no one has lost their life here. That changes now. Because our next stop isn't about objects piling up anymore. It's about human lives and the terrible arithmetic of what happens when a country's need to move outgrows the infrastructure built to carry it. For most of us, catching a train is the most boring thing we'll do all week. In Bangladesh, during the great religious holidays, it can be the most dangerous thing a person does all year. When Eid arrives, tens of millions of workers who've come to the capital, Dhaka, try to go home to their villages all at once in the space of a few days. The country's transport system, built for a fraction of that surge, simply buckles, and the trains that pull out of the great station in Dhaka become almost unrecognizable. Every seat is taken, then every inch of floor, then the doorways, the gaps between carriages, the couplings. And when even that is full, people climb. There are photographs. You've almost certainly seen them. of trains so completely covered in human beings that the machine itself vanishes. From a distance, it doesn't look like a train at all. It looks like a living thing, a great dark creature crawling across the landscape, its entire surface made of people. And on the roof of a moving train, the danger is not abstract. A low bridge, an overhead cable, a branch hanging across the line, a single moment of exhaustion, a hand that slips at speed. Any one of these can be fatal. For decades, this practice was one of the leading causes of preventable death on the country's railways, and it fell most heavily on the young and the poor, the ones who couldn't afford a ticket inside. Now, here is the part the viral videos rarely mention. Bangladesh has been fighting hard to end this. Years ago, the country's High Court formally banned rooftop travel. And in recent years, authorities have thrown up layers of security at the stations during the holiday rush. Police, mobile courts, checkpoints, specifically to stop people from climbing onto the roofs. It hasn't been erased completely. The pressure of millions of people who simply have to get home is enormous, and it still leaks through the cracks. But the image of a train buried under a mountain of human beings is becoming a picture of the past, not the present. A record of what desperation looked like when the trains couldn't keep up. That's what raw human pressure looks like, out in the open. But some of the worst urban hells hide their pressure indoors, behind walls, where you'd never guess how little room a human being can be reduced to. Which brings us to a building nicknamed, quite simply, the Monster. Hong Kong is one of the richest, most dazzling cities on the planet. Its skyline is a wall of glass and light. And it is home to one of the most claustrophobic housing crises on Earth. In the district of Quarry Bay stands a complex that tourists travel across the world to photograph. 5 enormous residential blocks, built shoulder to shoulder around a single courtyard, rising in a sheer grey cliff of thousands upon thousands of windows. Locals call it the Monster Building. Stand in the courtyard, look up, and the walls seem to close over your head, swallowing the sky. Around 10,000 people are estimated to live inside this one connected mass of concrete. But the monster is only the photogenic face of something much harder to look at. Across Hong Kong, the astronomical cost of housing has forced hundreds of thousands of people into homes that have been sliced and sliced again into ever smaller pieces. A single normal apartment might be carved into a dozen tiny cells, what are grimly called coffin homes and cage homes. And the names are not exaggerations. In the most extreme cases, a person's entire home, everything they own, everywhere they sleep, cook, and exist, is a wooden bunk barely longer than a body and not tall enough to sit up straight in. You lie down and you have arrived at the edges of your whole world. a space like this, the ordinary divisions of a home dissolve. There is no separation between where you sleep and where you eat, between the kitchen and the bathroom, because there is no room for separation to exist. Privacy, the simple ability to be unseen, becomes a luxury reserved for people with money. What makes this particular hell so unsettling is the wealth pressing in on all sides. This isn't a collapsed economy or a war zone. This is one of the most successful cities humanity has ever built. And still, tens of thousands of its people are folded into boxes, hidden inside the walls of gleaming towers, priced out of the very prosperity they helped create. Space here is the thing being taken, but in our next stop, it's something more fundamental than space. It's the air itself. On the eastern edge of New Delhi, there is a mountain that was not made by the earth. It was made by us. The Gazipur landfill has been growing since the 1980s. It was meant to close decades ago when it reached a safe height. It never did. The trucks simply kept coming, thousands of tons of the city's waste every single day, and the mountain kept climbing. Today it rises roughly 65 meters into the sky. To put that in view, it is nearly as tall as the Taj Mahal. A mountain of garbage, almost the height of one of the wonders of the world. And it is not stable. Deep inside the mound, buried under years of rotting waste, organic matter breaks down and releases methane, an invisible, flammable gas. When the fierce heat of the Indian summer meets that gas, the mountain can catch fire from the inside. Toxic smoke pours off the slopes and drifts down over the neighborhoods that surround it, and residents breathe it into their homes. It is dangerous in a more sudden way too. In heavy rain, the sodden slopes can give way. Years ago, a section of the mountain collapsed in a landslide of wet garbage and killed people at its base. Because, and this is the part that stays with you, people live at its base. In the shadow of this toxic, shifting, smoldering mountain, families make their living by climbing it, sorting through the fresh waste for anything that can be sold. They breathe the fumes, they drink from groundwater the landfill has quietly poisoned. And every day they trust a mountain that has already proven it can bury them. Efforts have been made to shrink it. Machines clawing away at the legacy waste, waste to energy plants trying to process what arrives. But the trucks keep coming, and the mountain for now remains. Here, people live beside the waste. In our next stop, the line between the people and the waste disappears entirely. Because there, the garbage doesn't go to a mountain on the edge of town. It comes home. Beneath the limestone cliffs on the edge of Cairo, lies a district that the world calls simply Garbage City. Its real name is Manshiat Naza, and it is home to a community known as the Zabaleen, the garbage people, who for generations have made a living doing something no city can survive without. They collect Cairo's waste. Not from a distant dump, from the streets by hand, and they bring it back with them. Walk into this neighborhood, and the waste is everywhere. It is stacked in the alleys. It fills the ground floors of the buildings. It climbs the stairwells. Families live in the same structures where their work piles up around them. The recyclable plastic on one level, the sorting on another, the living quarters wedged in wherever there's space left. Now, it would be easy to look at this and see only misery. And the hardship is real. The smell, the disease risk, the sheer relentlessness of living inside the thing you're paid to clean up. But here is a detail that the sensational versions of this story leave out, and it changes everything. The Zabaleen are among the most efficient recyclers on the entire planet. Working by hand, without machines, without a formal system, this community recovers and recycles a staggering proportion of everything they collect. A rate that shames the sophisticated, mechanized recycling programs of wealthy Western nations. What looks from the outside like the bottom of human society is quietly one of the most environmentally effective communities on Earth. That is the paradox of this place. It is a hell to live in, and a genuine marvel of human resourcefulness at the same time. The people here are not passive victims of the filth around them. They are the reason a city of many millions doesn't drown in its own waste. But there's a cost to being the system nobody planned for, because the Zabaleen have no protection, no recognition, no safety net. They and their children breathe the dust, handle the medical waste, and live one bad decision by the authorities away from losing everything. So far, the ground beneath these hells has at least been solid. In our next stop, there is no solid ground at all. There's only black water and 100,000 people living on top of it. On the edge of Lagos, one of the fastest growing megacities on Earth, there is a community that does not sit beside the water. It sits on it. Makoko is a settlement of wooden houses raised on stilts, standing in the shallows of a coastal lagoon. There are no roads here. There is no dry land to speak of. The streets are channels of water, and everyone, including the very young, travels by narrow wooden canoe. Nobody knows exactly how many people live here. The estimates range wildly into the tens or even hundreds of thousands, precisely because a place like this is almost impossible to count. It exists in the gaps of official maps, unrecognized and largely unserved, and the water it floats on is the problem. This is not clean water. With no sewage system and no waste collection, the lagoon has become a slow, thickening soup of everything the community produces. Household waste, human waste, whatever the surrounding city discards. It is dark, and it is still, and it carries disease. And children grow up paddling across it as casually as children elsewhere ride a bicycle to school. It is, on its face, one of the most precarious ways to live that a human being can devise. And yet, as with everywhere on this list, that is not the whole truth of it. Makoko is not a place of silence and despair. It is loud and busy and alive. It has markets that float, workshops, a fierce sense of community and belonging. People are born here, fall in love here, build here. Some years ago, the community even built a floating school, a striking triangular structure that drew the attention of the whole world before the elements finally claimed it. That is the uncomfortable thing about the worst places on Earth. They are still home to the people who live in them. And the greatest threat Makoko faces may not be the water at all. It's the city on the shore, growing hungrier for land, that has repeatedly tried to clear the settlement away. Now, you might be thinking that every place we've visited belongs to the developing world, that these are hells that could only exist far from the wealthiest corners of the planet. Our next stop is going to take that assumption and break it, because it sits in the shadow of one of the richest, most glamorous industries on the face of the earth. A short drive from Hollywood, from the mansions, the studios, the boulevards lined with the faces of the famous, there is a district that most visitors to Los Angeles never see, and that the city has spent decades trying not to look at. It is called Skid Row, and it is one of the largest concentrations of homelessness in the United States. Here, across a grid of downtown blocks, thousands of people live permanently on the pavement. Not in shelters, on the street itself, in tents, under tarpaulins, inside structures built from cardboard and scrap. Estimates of the population vary depending on who is counting and how, but by any measure it runs into the thousands, packed into a district you could walk across in 20 minutes. The conditions are what you would expect of a place with almost no sanitation and almost no privacy, and worse than you'd want to imagine. There have been outbreaks of diseases that most wealthy countries believe they left behind a century ago. Open drug use and untreated mental illness are woven through daily life, because the systems that are meant to catch people for addiction, for psychiatric crisis, simply aren't reaching them here. But the thing that makes Skid Row hit differently from everywhere else on this list is not the hardship itself. It's the contrast. Because you can stand on a Skid Row sidewalk, surrounded by human suffering on a scale you'd associate with the poorest nations on Earth, and see, rising in the near distance, the gleaming towers of one of the wealthiest cities in the wealthiest country in human history. This is not a hell born of a collapsed economy, or a war, or a natural disaster. It exists in the middle of staggering abundance. And that forces an uncomfortable question. The question that, quietly, sits underneath this entire video. If a place like this can exist there, in the shadow of that much money, then these urban hells were never really about a lack of resources at all. They're about something else. Something about who a city decides is worth protecting, and who it decides to leave on the pavement. Hold that thought, because our final 2 stops are going to answer it, with the 2 places that pushed the logic of the urban hell all the way to its end. To the point where the city itself decided they had to be wiped off the map. In the center of Caracas, the capital of Venezuela, there stands a skyscraper that was supposed to be a monument to success. 45 stories of glass and ambition. It was meant to be a great financial center, a symbol of a booming nation's wealth. But in the 1990s, its main financier died. A banking crisis tore through the country, and construction simply stopped. What was left was a vast concrete skeleton, nearly 200 meters tall, standing empty over the city. No windows, no lifts, no walls in many places, no railings on the edges. And for years it sat there, abandoned, waiting. Then, in 2007, as an economic crisis deepened, people who had nowhere else to go began to move in, thousands of them. They climbed into the raw, unfinished concrete and, with astonishing determination, built a functioning vertical community inside it. They rigged up water and electricity by hand. They opened little shops and barbershops and a church. Motorcycles ferried residents up the lower floors, because the higher you lived, the more flights of unlit, railless stairs you had to climb every single day along the edge of a 200-meter drop. It became known as the Tower of David, the tallest slum in the world. And it was as dangerous as it sounds. In a building with open ledges and no barriers, tragedy was never far away. Children fell to their deaths. Living here meant living permanently on the edge of an accident. Now, here is where the viral versions of this story get it wrong, and where we're going to set the record straight, because the Tower of David is not full of people today. In 2014, the government carried out a mass relocation, moving the residents out of the tower and into housing elsewhere. The vertical slum was emptied, and a few years later, a pair of earthquakes struck the region, damaging the tower and leaving its upper floors visibly tilting to one side. So the Tower of David still stands over Caracas, but it stands empty, condemned, leaning. A hollow concrete ghost, a monument to 3 different failures stacked on top of each other, a financial boom that collapsed, a state that could neither finish it nor tear it down, and the desperate ingenuity of people who tried to make a home inside the wreckage of both. Which leaves us with a strange, recurring pattern. The worst of these places don't simply carry on forever. Sometimes they're emptied, sometimes they collapse, and sometimes, as with the place we've been circling since the very first minute of this video, they are deliberately, completely erased. It's time to go back to that block, the one with 33,000 people, and no sunlight and no map. For most of the 20th century, in a corner of Hong Kong, there was a place that operated by no one's rules but its own. It began as a small fort, but through a strange accident of history and politics, it fell into a legal gap, claimed by no government that was willing to actually control it. And into that gap people poured. They built and built and built, with no planning authority, no building codes, and no one to say stop. The structures rose floor by floor and pressed together until the individual buildings fused into a single solid mass, a block of interconnected concrete, riddled with dark corridors and staircases that you could travel through almost without ever stepping outside. At its peak, an estimated 33,000 people lived inside this one block, which was only a couple of hectares in size. That made it, for a time, one of the most densely populated places that has ever existed on the face of the earth. Inside, it was a world unto itself. Unlicensed dentists and doctors ran clinics. Factories, food workshops, and homes were stacked on top of one another in the gloom. Water dripped constantly through the corridors. Tangles of wires and pipes hung overhead. And down on the ground floor, at the base of that towering mass, sunlight simply never reached. Residents lived in a permanent, artificial twilight, navigating by bare bulbs strung along the walls. For decades, it had a fearsome reputation, a lawless enclave beyond the reach of the authorities. And yet, as with every place we've seen tonight, the people who actually lived there remember something more complicated. A tight, self-governing community, where neighbors knew neighbors, and life, ordinary, human life, carried on in the dark. And then the authorities made their decision. They looked at this impossible place, too dense to police, too dangerous to fix, too tangled to save, and they concluded that it could not be reformed. It could only be removed. In the early 1990s, the residents were relocated, and the entire block was demolished, torn down to nothing. Where 33,000 people once lived stacked into the darkness, there is now a quiet, landscaped park. Walk through it today, and you would never guess what stood there. It has been almost perfectly erased. And that is the pattern this whole journey has been circling. Look back at everything we've seen. The trap of the coffin home. The mountain that burns. The city on the black water, the tents in the shadow of Hollywood, the tower they emptied. Every one of them is a place where a system failed, and where, into the gap left behind, ordinary people were forced to house themselves however they could. And again, when the world finally notices one of these places, the response is not care, it's clearance. Not how do we help the people here, but how do we make this disappear? The block is gone. The problem that built it is not. We live in an age that is deeply proud of itself. We build towers that scrape the clouds. We carry the sum of human knowledge in our pockets. We are teaching machines to think. And yet, the places we've walked through tonight land like a quiet blow to all of that pride. Because the true measure of a civilization was never its tallest building or its cleverest machine. It's what it does with the person at the very bottom, the one with the least power, the smallest voice, the fewest choices. A city is supposed to be the ultimate act of shelter, a place where human beings gather to protect one another from the world. But in the hells we've visited, something has inverted. The city stops being a shelter and becomes something closer to a parasite, quietly drawing the health, the years, and the hope out of the people least able to fight back, and offering them the darkness of a walled city in return. None of this is inevitable. Every one of these places was made by choices and could be unmade by different ones. The distance between a home and a hell is not really a distance of money or land or engineering. It's a distance of compassion, of whether we decide that the people at the bottom are worth protecting or worth erasing. Thank you for walking through the dark with me tonight. If this journey stayed with you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe so you're here for the next place the world would rather you never saw. Until then, look up at your own city and ask what it's built to protect.